Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I am Anil Thomas. Coming up in the next hour. Europe's top human rights court rules Swiss government violated the human rights of its citizens by failing to do enough to combat climate change. March marks yet another record in global heat. Prime Minister Netanyahu says Israel will eliminate Hamas brigades, including in Rafah, in a first. An Israeli sea-borne missile shoots down a drone approaching from the Red Sea. Political parties and leaders traverse across the nation as the election campaign picks up pace. On first day of Navratri, Prime Minister travels down south. Indie bloc seals seat deal in Maharashtra. Indian men's hockey team look to bounce back against Australia in the third game. Host Aussies lead the 5-match series 2-0. Well, does government inaction on climate change violate human rights? That was the question that the European Court of Human Rights addressed in Strasbourg, France. It ruled that the Swiss government had violated the right to life, home and correspondence of elderly women by not doing enough to limit climate change. The women had argued that they face the risk of dying in heat waves. Here's more.
17 judges of the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, France, ruled on Tuesday that the Swiss government had violated Article 8 of the European Human Rights Convention. Article 8 protects a person's right to respect for private life, family life, home and correspondence.
The Court holds that under Article 8, states have a duty to adopt and to effectively apply in practice regulations and measures capable of mitigating the existing and potentially irreversible future effects of climate change.
The judgment was 16-1 in favour of a group of 2,000 elderly Swiss women who had urged the court to get their government to cut carbon dioxide emissions much faster than planned. They pleaded that Bern's woefully inadequate efforts to fight global warming had put them at a risk of dying during heat waves.
In the present case, the court finds that there were some critical lacunae in the Swiss authorities' process of putting in place the relevant domestic regulatory framework. This included a failure to quantify, through a carbon budget or otherwise, national greenhouse gas emissions limitations.
The women walked out of the court triumphant and giving climate activists something to cheer about.
I am so shocked, positively shocked, so happy, because we could do something. We could do something. We could contribute to the future, to a better future for our children.
The court's ruling has provided an opening for further climate litigation. This is despite the same court rejecting 2 other similar suits before it.
It is an important judgment, perhaps a historic judgment, that will probably attract the attention of many countries outside Switzerland. So I guess the message that has been sent by the court is also of relevance to all these countries.
6 Portuguese youngsters sued 32 European countries for allegedly failing to avert catastrophic climate change that they say threatens their right to life. They too asked for governments to drastically cut emissions. The third case, by a former French mayor, challenged France's refusal to take more ambitious climate measures. The court threw these cases out because the litigants were not directly linked to the cause they were pleading, unlike the case of the Swiss women. The Portuguese youth, however, believed it was a good day for climate action. The cases that went before the 17 judges in Strasbourg, France, joined a growing trend of climate lawsuits across the world, resting on human rights law. India's Supreme Court, in a judgment dated March 21, recognized a right to be free from the adverse effects of climate change as a distinct right. It said Articles 14, equality before law, and Article 21, a right to life and personal liberty of the Indian Constitution, were the sources of this right. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, DD India's correspondent Giles Gibson joins us from Rome with the latest on this. Giles, good evening. Looking at the European Court of Human Rights, is it the Supreme Court on environmental matters or to enforce climate treaties?
Well, the European Court of Human Rights comes under the auspices of the Council of Europe, which of course is a different body to the European Union. But clearly this is being seen as a huge turning point in terms of legal action against government taken by activists who are looking to push those same governments to change their climate policy. And this is going to have shockwaves in different courts all over the world, including different international bodies. Just looking at some of the reaction to this from climate change activist groups, such as the campaigning group Avaz, which has said that this ruling sets a crucial binding precedent and that it could be a blueprint for citizens or activists to sue their governments over climate failures. Now, just zooming in for a second on Switzerland itself, in the wake of this ruling, we've already had the Swiss government coming out and saying that it is now going to comply with the order from this court, going to look at its climate change policies. Currently, its target is to cut its emissions by 50% by 2030. That's compared to levels seen back in 1990. So in the wake of this ruling, we can certainly expect the Swiss government to update their policy potentially, but I think we have to stress as well that the significance of this ruling really spreads far beyond simply Swiss jurisdiction.
Well, Gibson, the last 5 years, the number of climate-related court cases filed around the world have more than doubled. Where does that leave us?
Well, it looks like that trend is only set to continue based on the reaction that we've seen from climate change activists, including, of course, Greta Thunberg, who were gathered outside the court waiting for these verdicts to come down from the judges. Now, there was also some disappointment for some of these activists, some of these groups who brought these different cases. The Portuguese youth activists, as the report was just mentioning there, their case was thrown out by the courts. They said that simply the geographical scope that they included in their case, not just the EU states, but other countries in Europe, including the UK and Russia and Turkey, that simply the court did not have the jurisdiction to rule on those particular countries and that sort of sweep of the European continent. As well, the former French mayor who brought legal action also failed in his legal action, in his case, the court in that saying that because the former French mayor was not a resident of that town on the north coast of France, that his case was inadmissible. But despite that sense of disappointment, we also heard, especially from the youth activists from Portugal who brought their case, who failed in their legal action, that they are taking a huge amount of encouragement from this decision by the court about that Swiss case, because as far as they see it, it establishes this clear link between human rights and governments' inability or their ability to combat climate change.
Okay, Giles, a quick word. Looking at two similar cases that were thrown out by the ECHR, why was there a change in approach there by the courts when it comes to this time around?
Well, the court simply said that their jurisdiction just couldn't extend to the Portuguese case because they brought it not only against their own government, Portugal, but also against all of the other EU member states, as well as against Norway and Switzerland, the UK, Turkey and Russia. And in that particular case, the court also noted that the Portuguese activists had not actually brought any legal action in their country before it was escalated up to the European Court of Human Rights, which is what happened with the Swiss case. So they worked their way through the different levels of the Swiss legal system, and then the case was escalated to this court in Strasbourg. And as for the case brought by the former French mayor, what the court said is that simply because he has become a member of the European Parliament, because he doesn't actually live in that town anymore, that case was going to be thrown out. So look, some legalese, some fine details in terms of those other two cases that were thrown out, but there is no doubting the shockwaves, the significance of that ruling in terms of those Swiss pensioners who brought their legal action.
Well, we'll leave it there. Extreme heat is the silent assassin of climate change. I will leave it there. Thank you. Appreciate your joining us this evening on NewsHour. Well, extreme weather and exceptional temperatures have wreaked havoc this year. Weather across the world has turned nasty as climate change has doubled down on the impacts of El Nino, making its effects more extreme. Marine scientists have warned that a mass coral bleaching event is likely unfolding in the southern hemisphere, driven by warming waters, and could be the worst in the planet's history. Raghav Kumar Jha has filed a detailed report on the Earth's warming and its severe impact on climate across the globe.
The world just experienced its warmest March on record. The EU's Copernicus Climate Change Service, C3S, in a monthly bulletin said that each of the last 10 months ranked as the world's hottest on record compared with the corresponding month in previous years. The 12 months ending with March also ranked as the planet's hottest ever recorded 12-month period, which has become a cause of concern for the climate experts.
And when we see these record-breaking temperatures, so March was 0.73 degrees above the 30-year average, and it was 0.1 degrees Celsius above the previous warmest March. And so seeing records like this month in, month out, really shows us that our climate is changing rapidly, and climate change isn't a future problem. It is a problem that we have to face here and now.
Climate change-driven drought in the Amazon rainforest region unleashed a record number of wildfires in Venezuela from January to March. Marine scientists have warned that a mass coral bleaching event is likely unfolding in the southern hemisphere, driven by warming waters, and could be the worst in the planet's history.
The ocean has absorbed 90% of the extra heat from climate change. There are major implications for how the physics, the chemistry, and the biology of the ocean interacts with these warmer temperatures. So it changes ocean currents, it changes biodiversity and how successful biodiversity is in different locations, and it changes the chemistry of the ocean as well, in that a warmer ocean holds less nutrients.
Southern Africa is reeling from its worst drought in years, owing to a combination of naturally occurring El Nino and higher average temperatures produced by greenhouse gas emissions.
This is by far the worst drought in years. Ever since I was born, I have never seen such a drought. This year, it's too much. We are going to starve. We were expecting that we would harvest and sell to the national granary, but that will not happen. The heat was just too much.
Aid agency Oxfam warned last week that more than 24 million people in southern Africa face hunger, malnutrition and water scarcity because of the drought. Zimbabwe's President Emmerson Mnangagwa declared the drought a national disaster, appealing for more than $2 billion to save 2.7 million people from hunger. Malawi and Zambia have also declared a state of disaster from the drought. According to UNICEF, an estimated 9 million people have been impacted by the drought in Malawi. On the other hand, Colombia's capital Bogota is going to start rationing water this week to alleviate droughts wrought by the El Nino weather pattern. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, Russia and Kazakhstan ordered more than 100,000 people to evacuate their swiftly melting, snow-swelled mighty river beyond bursting point in the worst flooding in the area for at least 70 years. The deluge of meltwater overwhelmed scores of settlements in the Ural Mountains of Siberia and areas of Kazakhstan close to rivers such as the Ural and Tobol, which local officials said has risen by meters in the matter of hours to the highest levels ever recorded. The Ural River, Europe's third longest, which flows through Russia and Kazakhstan into the Caspian, burst through an embankment dam on Friday, flooding the city of Osk, just south of the Ural Mountains. Sirens in Kurgan, a city on the Tobol River, warned people to evacuate immediately. An emergency was also declared in Tumen, a major oil-producing region in western Siberia, the largest hydrocarbon basin in the world. Still to come on DD India News Hour. Election political pitch rises as the political leaders crisscross the nation to catch the voters' attention and pulse. Indian women have made great strides in voting and electing with a 16-fold jump since 1957 in Parliament. Is the Dravidian land of Tamil Nadu ready and all set for a triangular contest in the great Indian election?
Poll Pulse tracks the pulse of the poll-bound southernmost Indian state of Tamil Nadu.
Voting is our responsibility.
This is a big fight between BJP and India alliance.
Will you vote?
Yeah, power of democracy. This is a huge.
BJP is trying her best, for the past 10 years under the flagship of Sri Narendra Modi Garu.
The 2024 Lok Sabha polls in Tamil Nadu are witnessing the battle royale between DMK, AIADMK and the BJP.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I am Anil Thomas. Now, let's get you the latest on the world's largest democratic elections in India. Well, campaigning has gathered momentum with the first phase of Lok Sabha polls just days away. Prime Minister traversed around the country on a campaign trail trying to woo the voters, while opposition parties were also not far behind in canvassing for their candidates.
With polling just a few days away for the first phase of India's general elections, parties are in full campaign mode and intensifying their efforts to secure victory in the upcoming elections. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a public meeting in North India's Pilibhit. Addressing the gathering, Prime Minister extended Navratri greetings and slammed India lines, disrespecting the belief of the entire nation.
जिस शक्ति के आगे हम शीश झुकाते हैं, उस शक्ति को उखाड़ फेंकने की बात ये कांग्रेस के नेता कर रहे हैं.
Later in the day, Prime Minister Modi held a public rally in central India's Balaghat. In the evening, Prime Minister also conducted roadshow in South India's Chennai and addressed a public meeting in Vellore Lok Sabha constituency. Meanwhile, India's Home Minister and senior BJP leader Amit Shah held a public rally in Assam on Tuesday.
मैं राहुल बाबा को कहना चाहता हूं, पूछना चाहता हूं कि आपने क्या किया था असम के साथ. आपकी दादी के समय से असम को अन्याय किया गया. हजारों युवा अशांति की राह पर चले, मारे गए, सैकड़ों युवा मारे गए, हजारों युवा मारे गए. ये कांग्रेस पार्टी का पाप था.
The northeastern state of Arunachal Pradesh is also witnessing hectic political events in run-up to the polls. While addressing a gathering at a public rally in Namsai on Tuesday, senior BJP leader and Defence Minister Rajnath Singh raised concerns regarding China's recent actions. Moving to developments in the opposition camp, the Mahavikas Aghadi, the opposition coalition in Maharashtra, announced its seat-sharing arrangement on Tuesday. As per the pact, the Shiv Sena Uddhav faction will contest elections on 21 Lok Sabha seats, the Congress on 17 seats and Sharad Pawar's NCP on 10 seats in the state. Congress leader Sachin Pilot held a poll rally in Pratapgarh in Rajasthan and appealed to the people to vote for the Congress.
कोई भाषण दे, जज्बाती बात बोले, तेरे मेरे की बात करे, इसका कोई मतलब नहीं है। सिद्धांत का, विचारधारा का, 5 साल के भविष्य का। और आप लोगों से मैंने पहली वादा ले लिया। पिछली बार 11 लाख का हमारा कम था मामला, 11,000 का। इस बार 22,000 जिताना पड़ेगा।
On the other hand, allies of the India Alliance are campaigning together at some places. While in some states, due to no seat-sharing arrangement among allies, the parties are in the fray separately.
बंगाल की जो मुद्दा है, जो घोटाला बंगाल में पाए गए हैं, ये घोटाला कोर्ट की फैसला की बदौलत आम लोगों के सामने उजागर हुए हैं।
On some good news aimed at an inclusive election, senior citizens and specially abled people now have the option to cast their votes from the comfort of their homes for the Lok Sabha election 2024. The polling stations will be movable to their homes along with polling officers, presiding officers, representatives from all the candidates and security officers. He stated that the Election Commission of India has the motto that every vote matters. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, number of women candidates grew 16-fold from 1957 to 2019. Women made up only 9% of Lok Sabha candidates in 2019. However, the number of women candidates has never crossed 1,000 in Lok Sabha elections. Parties claim they look at winnability when it comes to choosing candidates. But women in the election fray is our focus tonight.
As India, the world's largest democracy, gears up for the upcoming general elections, the spotlight shines on the powerful participation of Indian women in shaping the nation's political landscape. From the beginning of the Constitution, Indian women have been granted the right to vote, which is a cornerstone of democracy. However, the actual turnout of women voters has often been lower than that of men. Various factors, including socio-economic issues, may have led to this situation. But now, the tide seems to be turning. The gender gap in voter turnout has significantly reduced in recent years, with 65.63% of women exercising their right to vote in the 2014 parliamentary elections, demonstrating the growing political involvement of Indian women. In 16 out of 29 states, more women turned out to vote than men, highlighting their substantial influence in shaping the nation's political landscape. In the 2019 Lok Sabha election, which was a historic moment in the country's post-independence era, 77 women were elected as members of Lok Sabha. Additionally, there are over 1.45 million or 46% women elected representatives in Panchayati Raj institutions, surpassing the mandatory representation of 33%. The 73rd and 74th Amendments 1992 to the Constitution of India have reserved 1/3 seats in the Panchayat and municipalities for women. India is presently one of the only 15 countries in the world with a woman head of state. Globally, India has the largest absolute number of elected women representatives in local governments. Also, for the first time, women voters outnumbered men in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. Similarly, the participation of women in Indian politics is on the rise. On 19 September 2023, India's Prime Minister introduced the historic Nari Shakti Vandan Abhiniyam Women's Reservation Bill, which seeks to provide a 33% quota for women in Lok Sabha and state assemblies. It can only come into effect after a delimitation based on a census conducted after the bill has been passed, with the next delimitation scheduled for 2026. As India prepares for another historic election, the women of this diverse and vibrant nation are set to make their voices heard, once again proving that they are an integral part of the democratic fabric of India. Sujata Lochab, DD India.
Well, 39 Lok Sabha seats from Tamil Nadu go to polls on April 19th. Unlike in 2019, Tamil Nadu in 2024 seemed poised for a three-cornered contest, with the ruling DMK-led front remaining cohesive, the BJP-led National Democratic Alliance or NDA roping in one more party, that's the PMK, and the AIADMK being left with smaller organizations. Let's take a look at how and why Tamil Nadu matters in 2024.
Located in the extreme southern part of India, the peninsular state of Tamil Nadu is home to Kanyakumari or Cape Comorin, its southernmost tip, which is the location of the intersection of the Arabian Sea, Bay of Bengal and the Indian Ocean. The state, with a rich Dravidian history, also shares its borders with three South Indian states, Kerala, Karnataka and Andhra Pradesh. Spread in an area of over 130,000 square kilometers, Tamil Nadu is a bouquet of ancient Indian culture and UNESCO World Heritage Sites. From Mamallapuram's Shore Temple to Thanjavu's Airavateshwara Temple to the Nilgiri Mountain Railway, the state has a wide variety to offer. The state is also well known for its vibrant and emphatic political colors, which are becoming evident on the state's political canvas. Tamil Nadu has 39 Lok Sabha or lower house seats in the Indian Parliament, all of which are scheduled for a single-phase election on April 19th. The state has a total voter population of 61.8 million, comprising 31.4 million women and over 30.3 million men. Over 8,200 voters in the state are from the third gender community. The state is currently governed by the Dravida Munnetra Kadagam or DMK, which bagged maximum seats in the 2021 assembly elections. Other political parties in the state are All India Anna Dravida Munnetra Kadagam or AIADMK, Indian National Congress and several other parties like Patali Makkal Katchi or PMK, the Bharatiya Janata Party, Vidyuthalai Chiruthaigal Katchi or VCK, Communist Party of India and Communist Party of India Marxist. In the 2019 general elections in Tamil Nadu, DMK Congress Alliance garnered majority of the seats, winning 38 of the total 39 seats. The state has a history of politics being swayed by cult figures and well-known actors like Rajnikant, the legendary M.G. Ramachandran and J. Jayalalitha. Onlookers are now keenly watching how the national issues will play out in the minds of the Tamil Nadu voters this election season. Antra Sinha for DD India.
Well, let's take a look at some other stories making news around the world. Well, Germany's government on Tuesday resolved to tackle rising crime as the country recorded a 5.5% rise in overall crime last year and a 13.5% jump in the number of suspects with non-German backgrounds. Germany's interior minister said that the country must improve integration and speed up deportations. Well, firefighters in Poland battled a wildfire that engulfed almost 2 hectares of a meadow in the Bekidze Mountains on Monday. The fire broke out on the southern slopes, drawing a response from 9 fire brigades and rescue teams who used quads and drones to monitor the wind and fire direction. People around the Mediterranean were seen flocking to beaches to soak up the sun amid high temperatures. Spain's weather agency called this year's run of record-breaking temperatures extraordinary. The European Union's Climate Change Monitoring Service on Tuesday said that the world had experienced its warmest March on record. Emergency services rescued about 50 passengers trapped in a bus that was swept away by the floods in northern Kenya on Tuesday. The bus was heading to the capital Nairobi when the ongoing rains had left the Garissa-Nairobi highway heavily flooded. Still to come on DD India News Hour. We discuss after a break about the global ramifications of a global landmark climate case won by the Swiss women. India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval launches a book on ancient history. Bangladesh hopes to rescue crew members of hijacked ship.
As India decides in the world's largest election,
we help you feel the pulse of the nation.
I am Sakal Bhatt.
I am Shubhendu Ghosh.
This election season, join us on a journey of India.
Discover the colors of democracy. Watch Poll Pulse on DD India.
We just don't bring you the news as it unfolds. We get to the heart of the matter.
We don't just present facts. We demystify complex social, political and economic events.
We break stories that shape the world's present and future because you deserve the truth.
I am Tanvi Taneja from New Delhi.
I'm Ollie Barrett from London.
I'm Nick Harper from Washington, D.C.
Join us on DD India Global Monday to Friday at these times.
You're watching DD India News Hour. I'm Anil Thomas. A quick recap of the headlines. Europe's top court, Human Rights Court, rules that Swiss government violated the human rights of its citizens by failing to do enough to combat climate change. March marks yet another record in global heat. Political parties and leaders traverse across the nation as the election campaign picks up pace. On the first day of Navratri, Prime Minister travels down south. Indie Bloc seals seat deal in Maharashtra. Men's hockey team look to bounce back against Australia in the third game. Aussies lead the home series 2-0. Well, going back to the top story that we are tracking on that big judgment, the historic judgment that's been passed, we're joined by R.R. Rashmi, Distinguished Fellow Terry and Special Secretary from the Ministry of Environment, former Special Secretary, joining us this evening to take forward these deliberations. So looking at the numbers, shocking, March recording that highest temperature, the warmest March that we have ever seen. The 10th straight month that we're looking at record numbers when it comes to climate issues. How does one look at the road ahead?
No, thank you, Anil, for getting me on your show. Climate change is indeed a very serious problem, both for the entire international global community as well as for the people in India who are extremely vulnerable to climate change. India is amongst a few countries which are ranked very high on the Global Vulnerability Index. It's actually the 7th amongst the top 10 countries. So the problem is extremely significant, and we have to do everything possible to prepare ourselves to meet this challenge. And the recent judgment of the Supreme Court of India, where they have underlined the importance of the rights of the people, to be insulated from the adverse impacts of climate change, is a very, very significant statement coming from the highest levels of judiciary in the government and in the country. And this should actually now goad the policymakers in India to empower the agencies at the local level to take every possible action and prepare plans for implementing those actions which can help the communities in addressing their vulnerability. And at the global level, of course, the problem has already been recognized. There is this Paris Agreement. There are several goals and targets set under the plans prepared by each country, and they have to live up to the promises that they have made. Unfortunately, the progress has not been as positive or as much as it should be. So the challenge before us is actually to force these countries which have contributed to the climate change in the past to rise to the occasion and meet the global expectations and the promises that they have made. Hopefully, the case in the Switzerland and also the case that is pending in the International Court of Justice, based on the resolution or a reference by the United Nations General Assembly, hopefully in the next coming months, it will force everyone to wake up and take some substantive action.
On one hand, when one just takes a look at the numbers and in the warnings that have been issued, world over, do you somewhere get the sense that we are not doing enough, especially when it comes to tackling this problem? More needs to be done. But it's more of talk, less of action.
Absolutely. The problem is much larger than what the countries are willing to recognize. We have already reached 1.2 degree more than the previous in the last the temperature level of the last century, and the goal set under the IPCC recommendations by the international community is that we should not allow the temperature rise to exceed 1.5 degree compared with the pre-industrial level of the temperature. Now, we have already reached 1.2 degrees. So in the next 10 or maximum 20 years, the prediction is that we will overshoot this level. And then the adverse impacts will be extremely severe. We are already seeing it now. The scientists are predicting that this year is going to be perhaps likely to be the warmest year on record in the last 10 to 20 years. So the problem is severe. The people who are already vulnerable, they will be faced with much greater challenges. The scarcity of water, the heat, stress, and the people who are cannot afford to insulate themselves against these impacts. They might lose their livelihoods. They might be rendered much more vulnerable. So obviously, the global community has not done enough in terms of mobilization of resources and also bringing down the emissions to a level that it meets the international commitments.
Okay.
The developed countries are expected to do much more. They are still not, many of them have still not peaked, whereas they were supposed to peak their emissions way back in 1990.
Okay.
So they are still trailing.
Okay, on one hand, let's look at this problem. How do you circumvent it? On one hand, you have the RBI that says climate change could make inflation worse. Shaktikant Das talking about it. It could hamper productivity in India. On the other hand, you somewhere need to take the first step of reducing carbon footprints. So, how does, a country like India circumvent, through this problem as it looks at progress?
Yes. If the climate change, the way it is progressing now, it is likely to affect the productivity of all economic sectors, in agriculture, in the water, or even creating greater degree of vulnerability in the health sector. So across the economic segments, it's likely to cause a stress on the economic productivity, and therefore it might push the economic forces to levels which are uncomfortable for our economic management. But the greater problem, I think, in a country like India, which is growing at a faster rate than the rest of the countries in the world, the problem is that of mobilizing resources for addressing climate change and diverting the resources away from our developmental challenges. That is why the developed countries, which have a commitment under the International Convention to mobilize resources and provide these resources to developing countries which are faced with these development challenges, they should do enough. India is doing already substantially large actions in the area of solar energy. We have done extremely well. In the mobilization of renewable energy capacity, we have done very well. And our emissions intensity of the GDP has actually been declining at a much faster rate than in the rest of the world. We have, against the targeted emissions intensity reduction of 45%, we have already achieved 32% reduction by based on the latest data. So hopefully we are moving positively as far as our domestic economy is concerned. But our resources obviously would not be enough. And the RBI predictions are in the right direction. That will put further stress on our economy. So climate change is going to create further difficulties for a country which is faced with developmental challenges. So we need to ensure that the international community joins hands together and helps countries like it.
We'll leave it there. Thank you. Appreciate your joining us this evening here on NewsHour, taking the deliberation forward on what steps need to be taken, especially when it comes to reducing carbon footprints in India and also across the world. Remember, this particular extreme heat is going to be the silent assassin in the next 2 to 3 months. Well, moving forward, the World Health Organization released the 2024 Global Hepatitis Report on Tuesday. According to the WHO report, the number of lives that have been lost due to the viral hepatitis is increasing. The disease is the second leading infectious cause of death globally, with 1.3 million deaths per year, the same as tuberculosis, a top infectious killer. The report released by the World Hepatitis Summit in Geneva highlights that despite better tools for diagnosis and treatment and decreasing product prices, testing and treatment coverage rate have almost stalled. But reaching the WHO estimation goal of by 2030 should still be achievable if swift actions are taken now. New data from 187 countries show that the estimated number of deaths from viral hepatitis has increased from 1.1 million in 2019 to 1.3 million in 2022. Of these, 83% were caused by hepatitis B and 17% by hepatitis C. Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that no force in the world will stop Israeli troops from entering Rafah in southern Gaza to eliminate Hamas units said to be there. On the other, Hamas said that an Israeli proposal on a ceasefire in their conflict in Gaza met none of their demands, but it would study the offer further and deliver its response to mediators. Our next report.
Days after the failed Cairo talks, Hamas said on Tuesday that an Israeli proposal on a ceasefire in their conflict in Gaza met none of the demands of the Palestinians. The proposal was delivered to Hamas by Egyptian and Qatari mediators at talks in Cairo aimed at finding a way out of the conflict, now in its 7th month. The talks, also attended by CIA Director William Burns, have so far failed to reach a breakthrough towards pausing the conflict. Amid all the developments, Israeli forces meanwhile stepped up operations on Deir al-Balah and Rafah in central and southern Gaza Strip on Tuesday. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated that Israel will complete the elimination of Hamas brigades, including those in the southern Gaza city of Rafah. Addressing new military recruits in Ramat Gan on Tuesday, Netanyahu asserted that Israel is working towards eliminating Hamas and release of all hostages held in Gaza. We will complete the elimination of Hamas brigades, including in Rafah. There is no force in the world that will stop us. There are many forces that are trying to do so, but it will not help, since this enemy, after what it did, will never do it again. It will also not be. Reacting to Israel's announcement on Rafah, United States said it has not been briefed about the same. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said at a briefing that Washington does not want to see a full-scale Rafah operation. International aid continues to be airdropped into Gaza, while Israel says relief is now moving into Gaza more quickly after international pressure to increase access. On Tuesday, a convoy of 8 trucks passed into Gaza at the Rafah border. Meanwhile, in a first, Israel on Tuesday used a seaborne missile defense system to shoot down a drone approaching from the Red Sea and crossing into the Gulf of Eilat region. Israeli military said missile boats, including SAR-6 class corvettes with both defensive and offensive capabilities, have been deployed in the Red Sea to engage with regional threats. Bureau Report, DD India.
Well, Ukraine's Air Force said that it had shot down all 20 Shaheds-type drones launched by Russia overnight, but the wreckage from a downed drone damaged a private house and cut a power line in the southern Odessa region. Russia has in recent weeks intensified its attacks against Ukraine's energy infrastructure. Megubi Lim has more from Kyiv.
Ukraine's Air Force said the drones were shot down over the regions of Mykolaiv, Odessa, Kherson, Dnipropetrovsk, Poltava, Vinnytsia and Lviv by fighter aircrafts, anti-aircraft missile, electronic warfare units and mobile air defense groups of the Ukrainian army. A power line was cut in the Odessa region as a result of falling drone debris, but there were no casualties. Russia has intensified its attacks against Ukraine's energy grid in recent weeks, and Kyiv said Russian forces had used more than 150 missiles and 240 attack drones in a single week from March 22nd, cutting off electricity, heating and running water to more than 2 million Ukrainians. Ukraine's biggest private energy company, DTEK, said that its stations, which supplies about a quarter of the country's energy needs, had lost about 80% of their capacity as a result of recent attacks. The company said the estimated cost to restore at least half of the losses will come up to about $230 million. Russia has said Ukraine's energy grid is a legitimate military target and called these attacks, quote, revenge strikes to punish Ukraine for its recent attacks against Russia's border regions. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has again appealed to allies for more air defense systems. He said Ukraine can cope using stockpiles at the moment, but was already making difficult choices about what to protect. Megumi Lim in Kyiv reporting for DD India.
Well, let's take a look at some other stories making news. India's Central Reserve Police Force paid a tribute to the 75 martyrs of the CRPF's 62nd Battalion who sacrificed their lives during an anti-Maoist operation in the state of Chhattisgarh on the 6th of April 2010. The officers lost their lives during a planned and horrific ambush attack by more than 500 Naxalites in an encounter that lasted for more than 6 hours. Indian Chief of Naval Staff Admiral Hari Kumar inaugurated a major fire and residential accommodation at the naval base Karwar in Karnataka on Tuesday. The Pier 3 offshore patrol vessel is 350 meters long and is capable of berthing offshore patrol vessels, large survey vessels and mine countermeasure vessels. This is part of an ongoing Phase 2A of the Indian Navy's Project Seabird, which will house around 10,000 uniformed and civilian personnel with their families. Indian Vice Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Upendra Dwivedi, visited the headquarters Dakshin Bharat area on Tuesday. General Dwivedi was briefed by the formation commander on the initiatives undertaken by the area headquarters. The Vice Chief stressed on embracing digitization and innovation to bring about a quantum leap in the Indian Army of the future. India's Met Department has forecast moderate to intense thunderstorm activity accompanied with hailstorms and gusty winds of 40 to 60 kilometers per hour at isolated places over the central Indian region. Light to moderate thunderstorm activity was forecast over the states of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Sikkim, Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland, Himachal, Uttarakhand and Karnataka on Tuesday. Well, during the launch of a book on ancient history, India's NSA Ajit Doval spoke about how Indian history was dominated by Western narrative and too much importance was given to Alexander of Macedonia.
The narrative that has been brought is that probably the first chapter about Indian history in any of the Western thing, it starts with Alexander. That Alexander was the first thing as if he discovered India. And it was the victory of the West over the East, he conquered India. Actually, he only came to the border of India to Jhelum and then probably was not able to proceed further, and thereafter that was the end of him. But the fact remains that the entire history of the Western thing you find when the history of India or the history of the West is narrated, this is about the history of Alexander.
The NSA further added that it's the foreign domination and their agendas which prevented Indians to write their own history.
That why was it? We can have this thing that we didn't write our own history. Yes, that's one of the reasons. Why did it happen? One, of course, is the factor that there was a foreign domination, and this foreign domination of physical domination can be accomplished through your armies, through this thing, but for mental domination, it is necessary that they should have no sense of pride in their own history, in their past.
Well, Bangladesh State Minister for Shipping Khalid Mahmood Chowdhury on Tuesday expressed hope that the 23-member crew that's been hijacked, the Bangladeshi ship MV Abdullah, could be rescued by this month. The state minister told media in Dhaka that the entire situation is now under their control. Replying to a question, he said that rescuing the crew members of cargo ship MV Abdullah, which was hijacked by Somali pirates on the 12th of March, is not a trifling job. The state minister said that the Department of Shipping is contacting the crew members regularly and they are all safe and sound. He further added that efforts are going on to rescue them through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Well, time now for all updates from the world of sports. In the Indian Premier League, Rajasthan will square off with Gujarat in Jaipur on Wednesday night. Rajasthan have been unbeaten in their 4 matches so far. They are on top of the points table. On the other hand, Gujarat have lost 3 of their 5 matches and are number 7 on the points table. In their previous match against Bengaluru, Rajasthan secured victory by 6 wickets with Jos Buttler scoring a century, Yugvendra Chahal taking 2 wickets, while Gujarat in their last game against Lucknow suffered a 33-run defeat. Rajasthan and Gujarat have played 5 IPL matches against each other, Rajasthan winning 1, Gujarat winning 4. Rajasthan have been led brilliantly by captain Sanju Samson this season, while Shubman Gill has had a share of success and losses as the new Gujarat captain. Indian men's hockey team will take on Australia in the third match of the 5-match series on Wednesday. Having lost the opener 5-1, the second match 4-2, India now trail the series 0-2. The 5-match series, part of India's Paris 2024 Olympic preparation, concludes on April 13th. At the Olympics, India and Australia are placed in Group B in the hockey competition. India won the bronze in the 2020 Tokyo Olympics and look to change the color of the medal 4 years later. Well, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Anil Thomas from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.